Stephanie White didn't just make a statement. She underscored a seismic shift in the WNBA's reality. While most franchises scramble to build balanced rosters or consistent winning records, White, the head coach of the Indiana Fever, now oversees a team that's rewriting the playbook on relevance. Thanks to Caitlin Clark's extraordinary magnetism, the Fever's social media valuation hit an industry-shaking $55 million, 6 times more than their nearest competitor.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
What's more revealing is how this number isn't just a fluke. It's data-backed proof of a star's capacity to carry a franchise far beyond the court. When a coach like White recognizes that her most valuable asset may be her player's digital presence, not just her jump shot, the conversation about what matters in professional sports fundamentally changes. For the first time, the WNBA has empirical evidence that star power isn't a luxury. It's the engine of growth. Caitlin Clark's impact isn't theoretical. It's measurable in billions of impressions and tens of millions in free media exposure. This shift forces a league to confront a difficult truth. Equal promotion across all teams isn't working. The disparity, Clark's Fever at $55 million compared to Dallas Wings' $8.6 million, shows that audiences gravitate to individuals, not parity. If the league wants sustainable revenue, increased sponsorship, and deeper fan engagement, it must double down on stars who move the needle like Clark. Trying to flatten the spotlight risks dulling the very edge that could propel the WNBA into its next phase of mainstream relevance. Caitlin Clark just pulled off what might be the most expensive flex in WNBA history, without even stepping on the court. A new report from STN Digital and Zoom Analytics just dropped, and the numbers are jaw-dropping. The Indiana Fever social media engagement has been valued at $55 million. That's not a typo. That's 55 with 6 zeros. And if you're wondering what changed to cause that explosion, 2 words, Caitlin. Clark. Let's be clear. This isn't some feel-good fairy tale about league-wide growth or an underdog franchise suddenly finding its groove. This is a data-backed power shift showing just how much one player can single-handedly bend the league's value in her direction. Because while the Fever are now sitting atop a $55 million digital empire, the second-place team, the Dallas Wings, are trailing way behind at just over $8.6 million. That's not a small gap. That's a canyon. And no, this isn't about championships, buzzer beaters, or even playoff runs. This is about raw social media power, the kind that pulls in billions of impressions and millions of engagements. Caitlin Clark hasn't just changed the game. She's rewritten the business model. If you're still thinking this is just hype, consider what this really means. Social media valuation measures what a franchise's online presence is worth to advertisers. So when a brand looks at the Indiana Fever's $55 million number, they're seeing the equivalent of tens of millions of dollars in free marketing exposure just by posting about Caitlin Clark. That's not potential value. That's real-world, sponsor-tracking, deal-making leverage. And the kicker? The Fever kept posting Clark-related content even after the season ended. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a strategic move, and it worked. Engagement didn't drop. It stayed high. Fans kept clicking, kept watching, kept interacting. That's the kind of sustained visibility brands dream about. This is the part where things get a little uncomfortable for the rest of the league. Because if you thought the WNBA was growing evenly across all teams, this report says otherwise. The disparity between first and second place isn't just a red flag. It's a full-blown emergency flare. While the Fever are riding a tidal wave of attention, most other teams are barely making a splash. Even the reigning champs, the Las Vegas Aces, only came in third on the social media valuation chart. So winning clearly isn't everything. In fact, it might not even be half the equation anymore. That's the reality the report lays bare. In today's game, star power beats scoreboard. Fans are showing up for personalities, not just stats. And when it comes to marketable personalities, Clark is in a league of her own. She's not just a player, she's a content engine. Every clip, every photo, every post featuring her turns into clicks, shares, and cold, hard marketing value. Her presence on a team is more than just a boost. It's a business model. Zoom Analytics and STN didn't just throw out random numbers. They broke it all down. The Fever's content, including posts that weren't even tied to live games, generated billions of impressions. That's not exaggeration. That's how deeply tapped in her audience is. She's not only reshaping the WNBA's visibility, she's redefining what value even looks like in this league. That means we're not just talking fandom. We're talking economic impact. Clark's content doesn't just entertain. It makes money. Or more precisely, it saves money. Because if a brand wanted to buy that kind of exposure through traditional advertising, they'd need to cough up millions. The Fever? They got it by building a smart, consistent content strategy around their most valuable asset. And it's working. This report flips the whole narrative the league has been trying to push for years. That success should be about team unity, equal opportunity, and shared spotlight. But the data just isn't playing along. The numbers show lopsided growth, and it's not because of front office decisions or coaching strategies. It's because of who's driving the clicks. Caitlin Clark isn't just dominating on the court. She's dominating in the metrics that matter most to sponsors: engagement, impressions, value per post. Every single data point leans into one undeniable truth: star power sells. And it sells big. What's wild is how clearly this changes the game for everyone else. The Fever now have a massive bargaining chip in sponsorship talks. They can walk into any boardroom and point to that $55 million figure. That's not potential reach. That's not speculation. That's quantified media value. And it makes every other team look like they're playing catch-up in a league that just moved the goalposts. So now the WNBA is staring down a crossroads. Because this isn't just a Fever story, it's a blueprint for future. If teams want to grow, they need to cultivate stars. Not just athletes, personalities. That means promoting them, building content around them, and letting them take up space. This whole idea of evenly distributing attention across the league is not holding up. The numbers say fans don't care about balance. They care about connection. And fans are clearly connecting with Caitlin Clark. So where does that leave the rest of the league? Honestly, with a decision to make. Do they stick to the old model of team-first branding? Or do they pivot and start leaning into their biggest stars the way the Fever have? Because let's be real, this isn't just about social media. This is about revenue, visibility, and the long-term health of the league. The Fever didn't just win online. They cracked the code. And everyone else now has to catch up or risk falling further behind. What this report also highlights is that the league's growth isn't going to come from trying to push equal attention on all teams. That's a marketing fantasy. Growth will come from investing in standout players, building narratives around them, and turning them into household names. The kind of names that pull people in, drive clicks, and justify the kind of sponsor money that takes a team from surviving to thriving. And that's not speculation anymore. That's measured reality. There's also a big conversation looming about player compensation. Because if one player is bringing in this level of value, it raises questions about whether the league's salary structure is keeping up. This isn't just about fairness. It's about recognizing impact. When an athlete creates over $50 million in digital value, it's hard to argue that the current pay model reflects the real economic picture. All of this points to one big, unavoidable conclusion. The WNBA's future depends on how well it can identify, nurture, and amplify its most marketable stars. And right now, Caitlin Clark is the case study. She's a proof of concept. She's the exception that just rewrote the rule. This report isn't just a pat on the back for the Fever. It's a wake-up call to the entire league. If you're still holding on to the idea that success is purely about on-court performance, these numbers say otherwise. Social media isn't just a side hustle anymore. It's core infrastructure, and it's becoming the most valuable currency a team can have. So yeah, Caitlin Clark just won a $10 million Fame Award. Not from a trophy, not from a headline, but from cold, hard data that shows she's worth more to the league than anyone else right now. And Stephanie White, coach of the Indiana Fever, isn't just proud. She's probably already planning how to keep that momentum going. Because now it's official. The most valuable player might not be decided by points or rebounds anymore. It might be decided by engagement rate. If you're into this kind of behind-the-scenes breakdown of how fame, influence, and business collide in sports, don't forget to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who still thinks championships are the only thing that matters. Drop a comment. Do you think the league should start paying players based on their marketing impact? And of course, hit subscribe for more drama, data, and breakdowns just like this. Because the next meltdown is always just one post away. Caitlin Clark's $55 million social media impact isn't just an eyebrow-raising figure. It's a line in the sand. The kind that forces every executive in the WNBA to stop and ask, what are we actually doing here? Because if one rookie, albeit a wildly hyped one, can generate more value than entire franchises, then we're no longer talking about potential. We're talking about a league where the rules of growth have changed. Permanently. Let's break down just how massive this gap really is. The Indiana Fever are sitting pretty with that $55 million valuation. The Dallas Wings? They're not even close at $8.6 million. That's a difference of over $46 million in social value. And here's the kicker. The Fever didn't even have a winning season. They weren't title contenders. They were headline contenders. And that, it turns out, is far more lucrative. This completely reframes what success looks like in the WNBA. It's not just about wins anymore. It's about visibility. It's about engagement. It's about how many people care enough to double tap, comment, share, and talk about your team. And the Fever have figured that out in a way no other team has. And let's talk about that sustained content strategy. Because that wasn't luck. That was deliberate execution. Most teams treat their social channels like they're seasonal. Game's over? See you next year. But the Fever kept posting about Clark, even after the final buzzer. They fed the algorithm. They kept fans emotionally hooked. And guess what? It worked. Engagement stayed high. Attention stayed locked in. And that momentum turned into measurable value. Meanwhile, other teams fell silent. Their seasons ended. And so did their relevance. That's not a knock on the players. That's a wake-up call for the marketing departments. The report also throws a bucket of cold water on the idea that the WNBA is growing uniformly. It's not, and it probably never was. But now we have the receipts. The gap between teams is wider than anyone expected. And it's not just a Fever versus Wings situation. This is a full-blown systemic imbalance. The majority of teams aren't even in the same league as the Fever digitally, even if they are technically on the same court. And yes, that's awkward, because it means a lot of what the league's been saying about parity, balance, and shared spotlight doesn't hold up under scrutiny. The fans aren't buying into that narrative. They're investing emotionally and algorithmically in individuals. And right now, Caitlin Clark is a clear investment. This brings us to the elephant in the room, star-centric marketing. The data says it's not just effective. It's essential. If you're not building your brand around your most charismatic, marketable player, you're leaving money on the table. Period. The Fever proved that. And that creates a new responsibility for every team. Find your Caitlin Clark. Or, if you can't find one, build one. Develop that player's brand. Amplify their personality. Make them impossible to scroll past. Because unless you've got a viral moment every other week, you're falling behind. The implications for player salaries are massive too. This is a kind of data that changes how athletes get paid, because the traditional salary structure doesn't take social impact into account. But this report makes a compelling case that it should. If one player can generate over $50 million in value, how you justify paying her the same as someone who generates a fraction of that? The current model doesn't account for off-court influence. But clearly, that influence drives real business outcomes. Sponsorships, partnerships, media coverage, fan base growth. All of it flows from visibility. And visibility flows from star power. So yeah, the league might need to rethink the way it compensates its top talent. Not just based on performance stats, but on audience impact. Because right now, the paychecks don't reflect the actual value being created. This isn't just a Caitlin Clark story. It's a blueprint for the future of women's sports. We've known for a while that female athletes are underleveraged in the marketing space. But now, We have hard data that shows exactly what happens when one of them gets the platform, the visibility, and the content strategy to match. You get $55 million in social value. And that number is just the start, because this kind of success has a ripple effect. Brands talk. Sponsors notice. New fans tune in. Suddenly, the Fever aren't just a team, they're a media property, one with value far beyond the scoreboard. And it changes how people talk about the WNBA. Because let's be honest, the league's had a long-standing narrative problem. People love to say, nobody watches. But those people aren't looking at the metrics that actually matter in 2025. It's not just about TV ratings anymore. It's about digital footprint. It's about how much attention your content generates. And Caitlin Clark is generating more attention than anyone else in the league, maybe in all of women's sports. This report is a turning point, not a blip, not a flash in the pan, a structural shift in how success is measured and how the league should evolve. The old playbook? Toss it. The new one says, amplify your stars, build digital empires, and let personality drive performance. Because the numbers don't lie. The Fever are winning the social game by a mile, and they're turning that win into actual business value. And you can bet other teams are taking notes. Or at least they should be. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Visibility equals value. And star power isn't a bonus anymore. It's a whole foundation. If the WNBA wants to scale, this is the model. If teams want to stay relevant, this is the strategy. And if players want to grow their platforms, this is the roadmap. Engage your fans. Stay present year-round. And don't let the algorithm forget your name. Because the algorithm has crowned its queen, and right now it's Caitlin Clark. Where do we even go from here? Because if you're a WNBA exec reading that $55 million figure, you're either thrilled or terrified. Thrilled if you're with the Fever. Terrified if you're literally anyone else. Because that number didn't come from a finals run. It didn't come from decades of legacy building or a stacked roster. It came from one rookie, one narrative, and a fan base that couldn't stop watching. And that right there is the shift. It's not about the long game anymore. It's about the right moment, the right player, and how you frame it online. Caitlin Clark walked into the league with momentum already built. She was the story before she even touched a WNBA jersey. And the Fever? They capitalized. They didn't hesitate. They didn't try to evenly spotlight the whole team. They leaned in. And they're cashing out in engagement, attention, and serious sponsor potential. This is the part where traditionalists get uncomfortable. Because the old-school sports mentality says, no one player is bigger than the team. But social media, it doesn't care about tradition. It rewards the loudest story, not the most balanced roster. And the Clark story is loud enough to drown out entire franchises. The Las Vegas Aces are the perfect example. They're reigning champs. They have star players. They've been consistently excellent. And yet, they're ranked third in social media value, behind a team that didn't even crack the top half of the standings. Why? Because fans don't scroll for trophies. They scroll for connection. And Clark, love her or hate her, connects. She sparks conversations. She's polarizing. She brings the heat. And heat equals engagement. Now, here's where things start to get a little tricky for the league. Because if you're trying to build a league that grows equally, this data throws a massive wrench into your strategy. Equal promotion across all teams? Equal exposure for all players? The numbers are calling that a fantasy. The reality is harsh. Most of the growth is being fueled by a few breakout personalities. Everyone else is riding in the wake. So the league has to ask, do we keep pretending it's all balanced? Or do we lean into the stars? Because what Caitlin Clark just proved is that fans don't want everyone treated the same. They want compelling characters, larger-than-life stories, and someone to rally behind. And when that happens, the money follows. It's no longer about fairness and exposure. It's about who can drive the most attention. Because attention is currency. Attention is sponsorship. Attention is growth. And right now, Caitlin Clark is the league's golden goose. The Fever are reaping the benefits. But let's not get it twisted. The WNBA as a whole is winning too. Clark's numbers lift everything. Ratings spike. Merch sells. People talk. Headlines hit. But the window doesn't stay open forever. Momentum fades unless you build on it. Which brings us to the league's next move. Because now they've seen the formula. It's right there in the report. Develop stars, promote them relentlessly, and extend their reach beyond the game itself. Keep the conversation going, even in the off-season. Turn players into content pillars. Build year-round ecosystems of engagement. If they don't, someone else will. And it's not just about Caitlin anymore. The pressure is now on every other team to find their own engine, their own driver of engagement. Because if they don't, they'll stay stuck in single-digit millions while one player keeps pushing her team into the stratosphere. And let's talk sponsors. Because this data doesn't just impact team strategy, it flips the script for brands, too. Why throw money at broad, vague league partnerships when you can go directly to the source of the heat? A sponsorship deal with Caitlin Clark, or with a team that knows how to use her story, offers more exposure, more engagement, and more value than entire league-wide efforts. That's not speculation. That's math, which is why you can expect sponsorship dollars to start flowing in very specific directions. Not across the board, not evenly, but to the content powerhouses, the personalities, the players who generate buzz just by showing up on a timeline. And honestly, this creates a whole new tier of player influence. We're entering an era where social media metrics will directly impact negotiations, not just for brands, but for salaries, endorsements, and team roles. Because now teams can't pretend they don't know who brings in the audience. The numbers are right there, plain as day. Caitlin Clark isn't just a player anymore. She's a revenue stream. And that changes everything. The WNBA is being handed a chance to evolve. A chance to stop chasing parity and start chasing traction. The kind of traction that turns niche teams into household names. That transforms a league from an underdog story into a business juggernaut. But only if they're bold enough to act on what this report is screaming. Stars drive growth. Period. So to the league, the teams, the players watching the shift unfold, it's time to rethink everything. Who gets promoted? What stories get told? How you define success? Because if you're still clinging to old school definitions, you're going to get left behind. And to the fans, you just got proof that your clicks, your shares, your comments, they matter. You're not just reacting. You're reshaping the game in real time. So yeah, Caitlin Clark just changed the business of basketball. Not with a championship ring, but with a digital crown. And the league better learn how to build a throne around her. Because this is only the beginning. If you're still with me, hit that like button if you're fired up about what this means for the future of sports. Share this with someone who thinks social media is just fluff, because it's clearly $1 million engine. Drop a comment and tell me, is the league ready to go all in on star power, or are they going to keep pretending balance equals growth? And definitely subscribe, because the next data bombshell, it's just one viral post away.